Cranston was one of the nicest guys I ever met. How many times have we heard that comment the last few days? In the case of Cranston, I don't know another person who was more at the ready to help another person. Cranston was truly a friend to all, in every sense of the word. In 1979, Cranston, Ron Ike, and I were summoned to IBM headquarters in New York for a meeting with Spike Leitzel, who was one of our senior executives. Spike wanted to know what could be done to put IBM back into the #1 market position for audio equipment. Well, following that late meeting, we headed back to Austin with the mandate to acquire external technology as quickly as possible. A few weeks later, I walked into Crandy's office and told him he and I were going to Japan to meet with several Japanese companies to negotiate a licensing arrangement. Cranston looked up at me from his desk and said, "I don't want to go to Japan." I said, "Well, why not?" He simply stated, "The Japanese bombed us at Pearl Harbor, and I don't trust negotiating with those guys." Well, as most of you know, Cranny wore his emotions very plainly on his sleeve. He unconditionally loved his family. He took great pride in his faith. He cherished his friends immensely. And he staunchly defended his country, right or wrong. So I looked at Cranny and I said, "Well, fine. Just call Spike's office and tell him we're not going." He thought for a moment, and then being the very pragmatic and maize-bright guy that he was, looked at me and said, "What day are we leaving?" I still remember that first trip to Japan and sitting with Cranston at the Narita Airport nearly 4 weeks after being there and waiting for our flight to head home. There sat Cranny across from me, deeply immersed in the culture, eating rice and picking up peas with his chopsticks, and talking about the wonderful Japanese people he had met, including Takeshi Okatomi, Keiichi Ataya, and saying how he couldn't wait to come back to complete the final negotiations. Well, Cranny now had some new, as it turned out to be, very lifelong friends. One evening, during one of the many business trips we would take to Japan over the following years, Cranston and I wandered into a Japanese tempura restaurant near our hotel called Hanamura Tempura. This was a local place, and very few gaijins or foreigners ate there. We ordered the meal, which was posted on the counter for 9,500 yen, and we also came back there quite frequently. And when we did, we usually sat there for several hours in the evening, discussing the day's business activities, drinking some sake, and eating the tempura as quickly as Mr. Hanamura could put it in our places, or on our plates. Most times we were the last customers to leave. It wasn't until several visits later, when accompanied by an IBM Japan person, did we learn that the 9,500 yen charge was Mr. Hanamura's luncheon special. He told the IBM J guy in Japanese that he had just charged us the 9,500 yen in the evening because he didn't speak English, and he didn't know how to tell us we were eating too much for the luncheon price. Well, that registered with Cranny. A few days later, on our way back to Hanamura's, Cranston abruptly stepped into a flower shop and purchased a large bouquet of flowers. Now, you've probably heard of the $150 steaks and the $40